Hello, everyone, and welcome to our month ahead webinar, our monthly webinar presented and hosted by Lanzcape and AdvocacyStrategy. Before we dive in, I just want to take a few seconds to thank Lanzcape, who made this webinar possible. Lanzcape is a new mobile-friendly app that gives you updates, alerts, and on everything that happens in the EU space, and everything that's going to be said today will also be followed in the app. So if you want to know more about that, feel free to contact me. I will share my email in the chat. And with that said, just going to keep it briefly because October is a very busy month, so I don't want to take too much time. I will hand it over to Stefan. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Alyosha. Welcome here to our look into the future, what is going to happen in the month of October, which will be a horribly busy month. For those who do not know me, my name is Stefan Borst. I am a partner in AdvocacyStrategy, which is closely partnering with Lanzcape to deliver the most professional public affairs solutions out there in the market. I've been in Brussels for 20 years, and rarely has geopolitics played so much into what is happening now on the ground. And it's also reflected in some of the things that are happening on our little agenda. We will look in the usual way through the different institutions, what is coming up in the weeks ahead of us, and also a little bit in the environment around the institutional activities. So that's really just some side activities that are going to happen. There are a couple of very important ones this month that you should at least have on your radar. Just a look back before we look into the future. We saw the State of the Union address, and for those who have not seen it, I recommend looking into it again. It gives you a very clear viewpoint on what the Commission will focus on in the coming months and also in the coming year. It heavily influences, of course, the work program for 2026, which is currently in the making. And we are in the middle of the Danish presidency, so that's one part of the trial presidency. It will end by the end of this year, and right now is really the crunch time where also the presidency will try to push through a lot of their priorities. The top line topics for October are, of course, the adoption of the 2026 work program, so last stages. There is the ongoing process of the multi-annual financial framework negotiations. So there we will see hopefully a completion. That's always a little bit of uncertainty depending on the amount of conflict that can happen in this area. And there also is the Cyprus presidency warming up to take over from the Danish presidency with the turn of the year. And there are, of course, as I just mentioned, a couple of thematic conferences that you should have on the radar. The proposals that are on the table right now are quite multifold. There are a couple that have impact on almost any industry and any sector. So, for example, the REACH revision is most likely, as long as you're producing a product, it's very likely that the revision of REACH will affect you either directly or indirectly. There also is the reality of the Industrial Decarbonization Accelerator Act. So anyone who in their production has a carbon footprint will want to look into that. So these things are good to have on the radar, but also, there are a couple of fitness checks and evaluations. So these are opportunities where you can give your expertise into the decision-making process of the European Union. And I always encourage my clients to make use of that. The earlier you get into the game, the more likely your positions are to be heard. So looking at the European Commission, there are still some channels for putting your opinion forward at this point in time open. The Digital Fairness Act is still open until the 24th of October. If you have any type of business model that relies on digital interaction in what way ever, then it is a good thing to put your thoughts and your data and your information into this process, because it will be a very critical assessment about potentially unfair commercial practices, psychological schemes, how people get more addicted to certain apps, how people are kept inside of certain apps, and misleading marketing of influencers, and all of these kind of things, that market practices that are out there and currently also affecting very often juniors. They are going to be reevaluated. So if you're operating in that space, it's a good moment to look into that. The Biotech Act is a little bit longer open until the 10th of November. This should be something to look into, because it's really an attempt by the European Commission to find a new balance, very much like with the Digital Omnibus, between regulation and keeping an up-and-coming industry alive and thriving within Europe. Europe has this habit of over-regulating first out of the precautionary principle. With that, they usually stifle business development, and then they have to issue an omnibus in order to rectify the over-regulation that happened in the first place. So that is something, for example, with the digital omnibus, also still open within this month, will affect a multitude of different legislations. It is unclear still, at least to me, if the AI Act in particular will be part of it. There may be a separate attempt to let's say, get the AI Act into a space where it doesn't harm the Europe's AI industry, as it does at the moment. But it could also be part of the omnibus. So this is still something that is underway. It will certainly impact cookies, banners, and all of these other things. So if, again, you are active in any way in the digital realm, this is something to make sure you put your evidence, your data, your insights forward in order to be heard when the Commission tries to issue the omnibus ultimately. Advice, European Commission. We are at this very rushed end of the year Q4 phase. So it's a really good time to get action on the ground, to make sure that also you have a good, proper knowledge about what is to come and what is currently being designed within the Directorate Generals. The earlier you enter into a discourse with the people in the drafting phase, the more leverage you might have before the proposal actually then goes out to the Council and the Parliament. Focus particularly on proposals that are being developed. If it's out there, it's your level of influence drops significantly. It goes a little bit up again when it reaches the parliamentary stage, but it's really something, the highest level you have before the proposal actually goes out. And make sure that you are aware of the work program 2026, that you understand which files in there will impact your business and your sector, and make sure you keep the conversation with people who are knowledgeable about this alive. So don't drop the ball, stay on the ball in order to make sure that you have things in the work program if you can, and that all the things that you want to see in there are actually mentioned either directly or indirectly. Work program 2026, just a little detour in terms of how is this going forward. The internal preparations are well underway. There is the planning cycle. This happens every year. So there is the planning already underway. There are already things being assembled, but now we are going into the institutional dialogue. So there will be intense discussions in October between the Commission, the Parliament, and the Council, and also stakeholder consultations and input gathering from civil society to make this work program as relevant and astute to the challenges of 2026 as possible. It's a good time for well-drafted and well-written position papers. So if you have one, go through it again and see if it is really formulated in a way that it is A, understandable, and B, realistic in terms of scope. I always make the example that sometimes people say, yeah, we want world peace, but then they neglect to describe a proper pathway how that should happen. And that is really important in your position paper. Make sure that you stay within the confines of the European Union law and describe what you want in terms that legislators actually could implement. That's a real step forward if you manage to do that. October, November, we will see the finalization of the work program. It will be presented in front of the plenary, and there will be a joint declaration on the priorities in the following. That is all procedure as usual, but the important part is to see these usually they're square papers with a lot of different dossiers on it, where you see that everything you want to see covered is covered in there, in fact. Yeah, October, December sprint. That now that the State of the Union is done and the priorities of the Danish presidency are clear, it's really time to turn from the strategic planning into getting horsepower on the ground. So right now, if you're still in the strategy phase, I would say, okay, you need to come to an end there, and you really need to get into action mode. So start implementing the things you thought about and the things and start, ideally the test driving is already over, but if you haven't test driven your messaging, test drive it. Make sure that your messaging is accurate and not too generic. This is something I see over and over again, that there is a lot of repetitive buzzword-like messaging that neglects the reality that you are a particular stakeholder asking for something very particular. If that is the case, then make sure you formulate it in a way that it also is understandable which fractional change of a law you desire. So that is something that I sometimes see in position papers as well as some more general publications, that there is a lack of distinct language and clear messaging and clear asks. Make sure you sort of give the necessary context that people will need to understand your line of arguments. Autumn's a very crowded policy landscape. So if you force legislators or decision makers to do their own research first before they can follow your line of arguments, that's not really helpful. And the more you can do what I call ride the wave, the better. So if you see that currently the majority of the debate is circulating around security, then make sure that your topic is ideally somehow able to be tied to the topic of security. It will ease your ability to be recognized and seen in the multitude of voices that are out there. There is a lot of legislative noise at this point in time. Yeah, and the other thing that I would even go further than what is on the slide there. Anchor your proposals in topical real-time data. I would add one thing to that and visualize it. Nothing projects data better than a very good visual. If you can, do that. Try to find visual representations of the data that you want to present. In the European Parliament, we face a very tricky month. Tricky not so much in terms of the dossiers that are on the table, but more in the fact that we have a month where we have 2 plenaries and 1 week, so-called Green Week, where the parliamentarians are all in their home constituencies. So that leaves almost no space for what I would call real influence work. So that's the committee and group work. There are some committee and group meetings scheduled, but it will be overshadowed by the hustle and bustle that goes along with the plenaries and all the traveling that is involved there. So legislators in the European Parliament will not be at their most receptive when it comes to that. The agenda for the first plenary session is already, well, a preliminary agenda we already have. There most likely today, I think it was today, there will be a final version one. So whatever I say now, please check it against the updated official version of the agenda. There may be changes that we haven't factored into this. On Monday, the 6th of October, it will focus on something very positive. That's the European sport model. There are a couple of other deliberations on the agenda, but that is the main topic of the day. On Tuesday, we will see some proper debates. There is one involving the Prime Minister of Luxembourg speaking, which is something you might want to look on, especially if you're in the financial sector. There are attempts to amend certain financial services and investment files, and also reporting requirements might get a different version of regulation. So if you're in that space, that is something you want to look into. There is a revision of the visa suspension mechanism scheduled, and the inland waterway transports is also on the agenda, very much like the CAP regulations and the position of farmers in food supply in general. There also is the extension of the derogation for heavy-duty vehicles on Tuesday. So basically, in whatever sector you work, something will be important on that Tuesday, the 7th of October. On Wednesday, the Prime Minister of Greenland, for those who recall, Greenland is the desired 51st state of the United States of America, at least according to Trump. It is still not yet, so it will be a very interesting speech to watch. Maybe there will be some insights there. There will be some votes on the Globalization Adjustment Fund scheduled, and another round of classical OLP files that are currently on the table. Thursday, the 9th of October, that's the last plenary date. There are principles for gender equality on the agenda, and the official agenda might add, I think this is one of the days where the official agenda might add some other topics. I'm not sure about that, so please look out for it at the end of the day. It should be out there. Moving forward, so advice for the European Parliament really is that as much as the plenaries will take center stage, don't forget the committee work. It's an understandable but bad habit to drop the ball in such weeks, because usually it's really an opportunity to stay in touch with especially the staff of the members of the parliament that need input and that need also sometimes support in certain developments that are taking place. Make use of that, make their lives easy, communicate well and trustworthy, and that might still be a very valuable month. The other thing that I'd like to highlight, the multi-annual financial framework, pardon, is going on. The MFF constraints are very critical, because as soon as you propose something that has a budgetary impact, it must stay within the constraints of the MFF. So any committee that is related to the MFF work, make sure that you formulate your ask in a way that it fits within the frameworks of the financial framework. Otherwise, it is very likely to get disregarded. In the council, we have also a host of meetings coming up. It's very important to bear in mind we have two elections, the Dutch elections and the elections in the Czech Republic, the parliamentary elections. The Dutch elections are general elections. They will take a lot of time and effort of legislators coming out of these countries. Then we also have of course, you probably have seen it, there was the meeting of the heads of state and government in Copenhagen. The threat from Russia is becoming more and more imminent. So the whole debate surrounding Ukraine, rearming Europe, and defense spending, critical infrastructure, all of that are very high up on the agenda of legislators at this point in time. There is a first Foreign Affairs Council on the 6th of October, which will be a defense council. There are several informal meetings, like on the 9th and 10th of October for telecommunications. On the 10th of October, also the ECOFIN Council takes place, so that's the financial world. We have the trade ministers on the 13th of October and 14th of October, Justice and Home Affairs on the 13th, and another Foreign Affairs Council on the 20th of October, as well as Transport, Telecommunications, and Energy. The General Affairs Council takes place on the 21st, as well as the Environment Council, and Agriculture and Fisheries is the phase-out of October on the 27th and 28th. This is a very busy agenda. Make sure in whatever area you are active to get in touch with the permanent representations and the people in the perm reps working on the different committees there to get the latest insights and maybe also some readouts after the council actually has taken place. It's often very good to hear it directly from them, how the atmosphere was, how certain discussions and power shifts have taken place. The Cyprus presidency, for those who are involved in that or who want to involve themselves in it, we have the upcoming presidency of Cyprus, which is now going into the preparatory phase. So we have this since the Treaty of Lisbon. We have trio presidencies. So these are 3 EU member states who agree on a 18-month program, and then they separate out which parts of that program they are taking particularly for themselves. So Cyprus is going to take over from the Danish. They will put a priority beyond the strong, secure, and competitive Europe, which is the headline for the trio presidency. They will take a priority in social policy, high energy prices, housing, and given their location, the EU-Middle East relations. The official program will be announced before the end of the year. When is up to this point still unclear, but it is a very good time to look into your connections to that presidency. So if you have anyone you know in the permanent representation, usually during a presidency, the staff of the perm rep increases multifold. So they have suddenly a lot more people working there. It's a good opportunity to make new contacts, work closely with organizations and partners that you have in and around Cyprus to get really the latest insights and see if any of your topics align with the presidency agenda and make their agenda easier or augment it or inform it in any way. That's an easy way to get in touch, and then also to maybe be part of some of the official events that are going to happen. The opportunity, if you want to do an event with the presidency, that usually is closed already, but for further future activities, always, if you look at the presidency calendar and you say, okay, I really would like to do an event with one of these presidency, make sure you start very early in getting in touch with them, because otherwise, for example, for Cyprus, as far as I know, the calls for proposals is already closed, so that is basically a done deal. But there may be another opportunity with the council, with Ireland, for example. That is something to be mentioned there. Okay, other developments. We have one out of all of these events. I want to highlight actually 2 of the events mainly. We have the Social Innovation Forum that's just happened. Yeah, so it's today. There, you probably either knew it was happening or are already there and present, and if not, you may have to get a readout there. The Global Gateway Forum is really important. There will be a speech of Ursula von der Leyen. There will be statements of heads of state and government. There will be a very, very big lobbying interaction going on. This is everything that the EU does in the external world to make trade, connectivity, etc., all geopolitical and geoeconomic challenges work. It's sort of a mini version of a Belt and Road Initiative from the European Union. It's supposed to activate several hundred billion euros. So it's a very good place if you are in global business to connect to the decision makers and be present in the lobbying that is going to happen there. The other thing that's a very good lobbying opportunity is the European Week of Regions and Cities. Still, regions and cities, that's very small theoretically, but they have direct impact on citizens' lives. So very often, if you have something that impacts an important region that may be a priority in a certain sector, it is easier to push your topic and your agenda through that route to the visibility of the legislators than go directly over Brussels and then try to make them look down there. So this is a very good week for connecting. It's also a huge event, one of the largest ones in Brussels, actually. So also just a good time to get in touch with people and do some physical networking again. The 5th European Defense and Security Conference, critically important at this point in time, where Russia is testing our borders with drones and other incursions. So that is really something that started out in 2021 as actually something, and I recall these discussions, so Europe does not have a role in defending the European Union. That's a national sovereignty that is not happening in Brussels, but increasingly citizens are expecting the EU to take this responsibility more serious, and I think this will reflect also in the conference that is about to happen there. And then we also have the European Accessibility Summit. That's one of the more limited focused kind of events. But all of these events attract very high-level political participation. So if you want to do proper networking, if you want to really have the ability to put some of your proposals and ideas forward and also gather some in-person intelligence, which is usually something very valuable, that all of these events will offer ample opportunity to do so. So, reminder, looking forward to October, work program 2026, very important because it will guide the work of the EU for the coming month, for the next coming month, and all of the year 2026. Be mindful the parliament is super busy, so if you have something to do in the parliament, have some situational awareness if your stakeholder is actually in listening mode. So make sure you pick the right time and day to approach them with something, otherwise it will get lost in all the noise and the hustle and bustle. And be mindful, there is a new presidency coming up. It's a very good time to get some first contacts to either strengthen or build contacts into the next presidency. With that, I want to focus once again. AdvocacyStrategy has a very structured approach to public affairs. We help you prioritize your issues, make sure you have the right data and insights. We do a situational analysis of how realistic the things you want to put forward are. Monitoring you can get from Lanzcape, as we heard, very in time and augmented by excellent advice. You can then define your positioning, make sure you know all your relevant stakeholders and have either forged or joined the right alliances. You have a sound strategy that is hopefully properly written down and written out into a document. Then go into the external phase, start your engagement, use the right outreach tactics. Do indirect engagement, create the environment for your arguments to actually flourish, and then evaluate, measure, and I would add adapt. If something seems not to be working, you need to change your approach. but you also need to make sure you measure the effectiveness of what you're doing, because that you will need eventually for your internal reporting. That will ensure that you have the budget you need for the years to come. All of that is also summed up in a long checklist that I'm not going to read out now, but you can download it, look at it. If you don't make any checks on some of the boxes, it might be time to try to do so and do some work and put some work in it. It's really necessary. With that, I would hand it back to Alyosha. And yeah, short thank you to our excellent Giacomo and Mirella, the research team that always helps us do this presentation in a proper form. I suck at PowerPoint and they make it easy for me, and I'm really grateful for that. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Stefan, for this mouthful of month ahead. Thank you so much. And thank you indeed, as you already did, to our team at Lanzcape, Giacomo and Mirella. And thank you, everybody, for being here today. If you have any questions, if you want to reach out to either Stefan or you want to know more about Lanzcape, feel free to get in touch. Don't forget to subscribe to our LinkedIn page, where we will share the slides from today. And also you will receive a link with the webinar today. So thank you so much. And don't forget, our next webinar is already planned for the 3rd of November. So put it in your agendas, and hopefully we will have another lunch together with some insights for November. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.